welcome to Alovea Meditation and Sleep, where we journey through sacred scriptures to bring you peace, stillness, and divine connection. Today, we will meditate on the powerful story of Samson, a man called by God before his birth to fulfill a special purpose for his people. Before we begin, find a quiet space where you can relax and let go of distractions. Sit or lie down comfortably, close your eyes, and take a deep breath. Feel the tension in your body melt away as you exhale slowly. As I read from the book of Judges, chapters 13 through 16, allow the words to wash over you. Let the story of Samson's life and his struggles connect you to the divine. This is a time for reflection, prayer, and inner peace. Trust in the presence of God to guide you through this meditation. Now, let us begin. This passage from Judges 13 recounts the miraculous birth of Samson, one of the most famous judges of Israel. The Israelites are once again in a period of rebellion, prompting the Lord to allow them to fall under the rule of the Philistines for 40 years. During this time, the angel of the Lord appears to the wife of Manoah, a childless woman, and announces that she will give birth to a son. This child, Samson, is to be a Nazirite, which means he will be consecrated to God from birth and must adhere to specific vows, including abstaining from alcohol and never cutting his hair. Manoah, upon hearing this from his wife, prays for further guidance, and the angel of the Lord appears again to confirm the instructions. When Manoah offers to prepare food for the angel instructs him to offer it as a burnt offering to the Lord. In a dramatic moment, the angel ascends in the flames of the offering, revealing his divine nature. Manoah fears they will die because they have seen the Lord, but his wife reassures him that God would not have shown them these things if he intended to harm them. Eventually, the prophecy comes true, and Samson is born. As he grows, the Spirit of the Lord begins to work through him, setting the stage for his role as a deliverer of Israel from the Philistines. The story highlights themes of divine intervention, faith, and the calling of individuals to fulfill God's purposes. Judges chapter 13, verses 1 to 24. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. A certain man of Zorah, named Manoah, from the clan of the Danites, had a wife who was childless, unable to give birth. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, "You are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now, see to it that you drink no wine or other fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines." Then the woman went to her husband and told him, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God, very awesome. I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name. But he said to me, 'You will become pregnant and have a son. Now then, drink no wine or other fermented drink, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazirite of God from the womb until the day of his death." Then Manoah prayed to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I beg you to let the man of God you sent to us come again to teach us how to bring up the boy who is to be born." God heard Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman while she was out in the field. But her husband Manoah was not with her. The woman hurried to tell her husband, "He's here, the man who appeared to me the other day." Manoah got up and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said, "Are you the man who talked to my wife?" "I am," he said. So Manoah asked him, "When your words are fulfilled, what is to be the rule that governs the boy's life and work?" The angel of the Lord answered, "Your wife must do all that I have told her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, nor drink any wine or other fermented drink, nor eat anything unclean. She must do everything I have commanded her." Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "We would like you to stay until we prepare a young goat for you." The angel of the Lord replied, "Even though you detain me, I will not eat any of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, offer it to the Lord." Manoah did not realize that it was the angel of the Lord. Then Manoah inquired of the angel of the Lord, "What is your name, so that we may honor you when your word comes true?" He replied, "Why do you ask my name? It is beyond understanding." Then Manoah took a young goat, together with the grain offering, and sacrificed it on a rock to the Lord. And the Lord did an amazing thing while Manoah and his wife watched. As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Seeing this, Manoah and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord did not show himself again to Manoah and his wife, Manoah realized that it was the angel of the Lord. "We are doomed to die," he said to his wife. "We have seen God." But his wife answered, "If the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and grain offering from our hands, nor shown us all these things, or now told us this." The woman gave birth to a boy and named him Samson. He grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Mahane Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. In Judges 14, Samson's story takes a dramatic turn as he seeks to marry a Philistine woman from Timnah, despite his parents' objections that she is not an Israelite. Samson insists on the marriage, and unbeknownst to his parents, this desire is part of God's plan to confront the Philistines, who rule over Israel at the time. During the journey to Timnah, Samson is attacked by a lion, but the Spirit of the Lord empowers him to kill it with his bare hands. Later, as he returns to marry the woman, he finds bees and honey inside the carcass of the lion. Samson eats the honey and shares it with his parents without revealing its source. At the wedding feast, Samson proposes a riddle to the Philistines, based on his encounter with the lion and the honey. The Philistines, unable to solve the riddle, pressure Samson's new wife to coax the answer out of him. After much pleading, she succeeds, and the Philistines solve the riddle by the final day of the feast. Enraged by their deceit, Samson is filled with the Spirit of the Lord again. He goes to the Philistine city of Ashkelon, kills 30 men, and takes their clothes to settle his bet with the wedding guests. Angered by the situation, Samson returns home, and his wife is given to another man. This chapter illustrates Samson's impulsive nature, his extraordinary strength, and how God is using him to begin the confrontation with the Philistines. It also introduces the personal struggles and conflict that will characterize Samson's life. Judges chapter 14, verses 1 to 20. Samson went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, "I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife." His father and mother replied, "Isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives, or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife?" But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me. She's the right one for me." His parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at that time they were ruling over Israel. Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. But he told neither his father nor his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and he liked her. Sometime later, when he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look at the lion's carcass, and in it he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. He scooped out the honey with his hands and ate as he went along. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some, and they too ate it. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from the lion's carcass. Now his father went down to see the woman, and there Samson held a feast, as was customary for young men. When the people saw him, they chose 30 men to be his companions. "Let me tell you a riddle," Samson said to them. "If you can give me the answer within the 7 days of the feast, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. If you can't tell me the answer, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes." "Tell us your riddle," they said. "Let's hear it." He replied, "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet." For 3 days, they could not give the answer. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, "Coax your husband into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. Did you invite us here to steal our property?" Then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing, "You hate me. You don't really love me. You've given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer." "I haven't even explained it to my father or mother," he replied, "so why should I explain it to you?" She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. So on the 7th day, he finally told her, because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to her people. Before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" Samson said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. He went down to Ashkelon, struck down 30 of their men, stripped them of everything, and gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle. Burning with anger, he returned to his father's home, and Samson's wife was given to one of his companions who had attended him at the feast. In Judges 15, Samson returns to visit his wife, only to discover that her father has given her to another man, believing Samson had abandoned her. The father offers Samson his younger daughter, but Samson furious, vows to take revenge on the Philistines. To retaliate, Samson catches 300 foxes, ties them in pairs by their tails, attaches burning torches to them, and releases them into the Philistines' grain fields, burning their crops, vineyards, and olive groves. When the Philistines learn that Samson is responsible because his wife was given away, they burn her and her father to death. Samson, enraged by their actions, attacks the Philistines and slaughters many of them, retreating afterward to a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines then camp near Judah, demanding Samson's capture. The people of Judah, fearing conflict with the Philistines, send 3,000 men to capture Samson. Samson agrees to be tied up as long as they do not kill him themselves. When the Philistines approach to take him, the Spirit of the Lord empowers Samson. He breaks free from his bindings and, finding a donkey's jawbone, uses it to kill 1,000 Philistines. After this great victory, Samson, exhausted and thirsty, calls out to God for water. God miraculously provides water from a hollow in the ground, reviving Samson. The place is named En-Hakkore, meaning the caller's spring. The chapter concludes with Samson leading Israel for 20 years during the time of Philistine oppression. This chapter further highlights Samson's immense strength, the escalating conflict between him and the Philistines, and God's continued support in his battles, despite his impulsive actions. Judges chapter 15, verse 1 to 20. Samson's vengeance on the Philistines. Later on, at the time of wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He said, "I'm going to my wife's room." But her father would not let him go in. "I was so sure you hated her," he said, "that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead." Samson said to them, "This time, I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them." So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. He then fastened a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and standing grain, together with the vineyards and olive groves. When the Philistines asked, "Who did this?" they were told, "Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to his companion." So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. Samson said to them, "Since you've acted like this, I swear that I won't stop until I get my revenge on you." He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines went up and camped in Judah. Spreading out near Lehi, the people of Judah asked, "Why have you come to fight us?" "We have come to take Samson prisoner," they answered, "to do to him as he did to us." Then 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Etam and said to Samson, "Don't you realize that the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done to us?" He answered, "I merely did to them what they did to me." They said to him, "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." Samson said, "Swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves." "Agreed," they answered. "We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up from the rock. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him, shouting. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Then Samson said, "With a donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. With a donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men." When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramath Lehi. Because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord, "You have given your servant this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" Then God opened up the hollow place in Lehi, and water came out of it. When Samson drank, his strength returned, and he revived. So the spring was called En-Hakkore, and it is still there in Lehi. Samson led Israel for 20 years in the days of the Philistines. In Judges chapter 16, the legendary tale of Samson reaches its dramatic conclusion. Known for his unmatched strength, Samson is now entangled in a dangerous game of love and betrayal. When he falls for the captivating Delilah, a Philistine plot to uncover the secret behind his strength unfolds. Lured by the promise of great wealth, Delilah persistently seeks to discover the source of his power, leading to Samson's greatest vulnerability. As Samson's fate is sealed by this act of treachery, he finds himself imprisoned, humiliated, and at the mercy of his enemies. But even in his darkest hour, Samson's story isn't over. In a stunning turn of events, his final act will surprise all, delivering a blow so powerful that it cements his place as one of the most unforgettable figures in biblical history. What drives Delilah to betray Samson? And what will Samson do when the weight of his downfall becomes clear? This chapter is filled with tension, suspense, and a final twist that will leave you marveling at the power of redemption and vengeance. Judges chapter 16, verse 1 to 31. One day, Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her. The people of Gaza were told, "Samson is here." So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, "At dawn we'll kill him." But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gate, together with the 2 posts, and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." Then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. With men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You have made a fool of me. You lied to me, "Come now, tell me how you can be tied." He said, "If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. Then, with men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were threads. Delilah then said to Samson, "All this time you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." He replied, "If you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become as weak as any other man." So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them into the fabric, and tightened it with the pin. Again she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep and pulled up the pin and the loom with the fabric. Then she said to him, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you have made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. So he told her everything. "No razor has ever been used on my head," he said, "because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, "Come back once more. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him, and his strength left him. Then she called, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep and thought, "I'll go out as before and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. Binding him with bronze shackles, they set him to grinding grain in the prison. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. The death of Samson. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god, and to celebrate, saying, "Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands." When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, "Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, the one who laid waste our land and multiplied our slain." While they were in high spirits, they shouted, "Bring out Samson to entertain us." So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, "Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them." Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All the rulers of the Philistines were there, and on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. Then his brothers and his father's whole family went down to get him. They brought him back and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. He had led Israel 20 years. As we close the reading of Judges, chapters 13 to 16, the story of Samson invites us into a deep reflection on strength, weakness, and the mysterious ways in which God works through human lives. Samson, though blessed with immense physical strength, faced profound spiritual struggles, often blinded by his own desires and impulses. His journey is not just one of battles fought with the Philistines, but also an internal struggle between his calling as a Nazirite dedicated to God and the temptations that constantly drew him away. In these chapters, we see the interplay of strength and vulnerability. Though Samson's strength was legendary, his moments of weakness, particularly with Delilah, reveal to us the delicate balance between the gifts we receive from God and the ways we are called to guard and honor those gifts. Even when Samson fell and was captured, when it seemed all was lost, his final prayer to the Lord reminds us of the power of repentance and redemption. God, in his mercy, answered Samson one last time, using him to fulfill his divine plan. As we now move into a time of reflection, I invite you to consider the following. Where do we, like Samson, rely on our own strength, forgetting the source of all power? Where in our lives have we been led astray, only to find God waiting patiently to restore us when we return to Him? Take the next 30 minutes to meditate on these questions, allowing the Holy Spirit to reveal areas in your life that may need His healing touch. Use this time to sit quietly with the story, letting its lessons settle into your heart. Reflect on Samson's life as a mirror for your own, his triumphs, his falls, and ultimately his return to God. What can you learn from this? What is God speaking to you through Samson's story today? Let this be a time to connect more deeply with the divine presence, trusting that in both our strengths and weaknesses, God is always at work within us. Let's enter this time of reflection with open hearts and willing spirits. Thank you for tuning into Alovea Meditation and Sleep. We hope you enjoyed this immersive Samson meditation experience. Do not forget what we did here today. Let it be a guiding light to your day and week. If you find yourself lost, always come back to refresh your spirit and be reminded on the path you ought to be on. God be with you, God bless you, and may we all be found worthy in His eyes when the day comes, for we all are not perfect.